Breaking Down the Law is sponsored by Battle-Born Injury Lawyers.
There's been a lot of talk over the 2020 census. The census counts people. That determines seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as federal funding for things like roads and schools. But this week, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments from the Trump administration, which seeks to exclude undocumented immigrants from the census. So here to explain reasons and possible outcomes, attorney Matt Hoffmann with Battle-Born Injury Lawyers. Matt, as always, thank you for being on the show. The first question, I guess, is that, last year the Supreme Court ruled that citizenship would not be included on the census questionnaire. So how's this any different?
Well, what this comes down to is redistricting. So the census is a Supreme Court ruling that you couldn't ask the question. This is a memorandum from the Trump administration to the state saying that when you do your redistricting based on the population results of the census, you should not count undocumented immigrants. And when you think of states like California, where they have a large population of undocumented immigrants, the result could mean that they lose seats in the House and lose electoral votes, along with things like that. But then, in other states where you've seen population growth, including Nevada, it could mean that you gain a seat and an electoral vote. So the states like New York and California are fighting hard against this, and that's what the fight comes down to.
And if you could, basically, what is the reason for the fight? Why is it that the Trump administration wants to not include those undocumented immigrants?
Well, it comes down to the fact they can't vote. Undocumented immigrants have no right to vote. And what happens as a result is a disproportionate representation. At least that's the argument. And it's an interesting argument. Under the Constitution, we all have a right to equal representation. That's why we have a House of Representatives. They represent based on proportionality. But in certain districts, you might have, let's say, 1 million people, and 200,000 of them are undocumented immigrants, versus another district where it's 1 million people and everyone's a U.S. citizen that can vote. Under that scenario, the district with only 800,000 people who can vote, their vote counts more. They have unequal representation. And so the concept is that, we shouldn't have these districts, these seats being created based upon population that doesn't, take into account the fact that many of the people there can't even vote. And, if members of the House are listening to their constituents, you can't listen to people who don't vote. So that's the idea. And that's, it's not an illogical argument. It's just a newer fight because it really hasn't become an issue until the 90s.
Well, and then I suppose, Matthew, what would be the implication here in Nevada? Because that's what, we care about since we're citizens of Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, anytime there's a census, a state like Nevada that's always seems to be growing should take keen interest in it because you could see an increase in seats. You could see an increase in electoral votes. As to this case, I think I read the transcripts from the hearing for the Supreme Court, and I think it's going to be deemed as premature. Basically, they're saying to the people that are complaining to the states, they haven't even done this yet. And quite frankly, I don't know how they would, figure out how many undocumented immigrants there are since it wasn't on the census. I don't know where the data is going to come from. But they're seeking basically injunctive relief, saying just declare they can't do this. I don't think they're going to rule on it until something's done. But it could impact Nevada. If California loses seats, there's only so many seats, and they don't just go away; they get shifted to other states. And so we should be watching this, regardless of this issue, just on the census alone.
Sure, yeah, as our state continues to grow. Matthew Hoffmann breaking down the law, giving us kind of the basic understanding of what the Supreme Court is tackling right now. We appreciate your time as always, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Matt.
Sounds good.